Okay. So, guys, we will continue further. And next concept we will look at is polymorphism. Again, inheritance will be used here. Fine. So, what is polymorphism? What do you mean by this? Let's understand with a layman term example. See, when I say polymorphism, it means an entity taking multiple forms. Example, a human being. He can take multiple forms. It is one person who can take multiple forms. When he's happy, he's in a different form. Upset, different form. Depressed, different form. Angry, different form. He's now taking a particular form depending on the situation. Can I tell that? That is what is polymorphism, which means a particular entity taking multiple forms is called as polymorphism. Fine. Now, what is polymorphism in Java? This is in layman terms. Fine. Another example would be a lot of people they celebrate Durga Puja, right? And it is celebrated for how many days? 10 days, 9 nights. 9 nights and 10 days it is celebrated. So, I was just reading about this in Wikipedia. What is the significance of Durga Puja? So, because a lot of students they come and ask me that, Sir, Durga Puja, I'm going to my place. I will take some classes online. So, I was curious to know why this is celebrated. And after reading in Wikipedia, I got to know that every day the goddess Durga takes a particular form to fight against the demon. Fine. So 9 nights, 10 days, this fight goes on. And every day, the goddess Durga takes a different form, fights with the demon, and ultimately, the victory of good happens over the evil. This is what is the significance of Durga Puja. Again, here, goddess Durga is taking more than one form depending on the situation. That's again polymorphism. But now we are all interested in learning polymorphism in Java. What is polymorphism in Java? So polymorphism in Java is here we develop here we develop a feature such that here we develop a feature such that it can take more than one form. Right? This is your second OOPS concept. Okay, there are four pillars of OOPS. Inheritance. The second one I've started polymorphism, abstraction, encapsulation. Fine. Four major pillars of OOPS. We have started with the second OOPS concept, that is polymorphism. What are we doing polymorphism? Here we develop a feature such that it can take more than one form depending on the situation. But how do we do this now? So in order to achieve this, we have something called as overriding. And then we have overloading. Fine. See this here. So I will now just go to chat GPT and here let's ask, okay, polymorphism in Java. Okay. So let's see what chat GPT will define. Polymorphism is a fundamental concept of object-oriented programming and is supported in Java. It allows objects of different classes to be treated as an object of common superclass. Rather, here we are developing a feature which can take more than one form depending on the situation. Now, there are two types. One is called as compile time polymorphism, which is called as, okay, so compile time polymorphism is nothing but your overloading. Fine. The next one that we have here is runtime polymorphism. What is runtime polymorphism? Runtime polymorphism is overriding. So we'll start our discussion with overriding. Now what we have to do here? You have to develop a feature such that it can take more than one form. Fine. Very important. Very important note. See this here. Now, we have method overloading and method overriding. So, can we do polymorphism on variables? Let's see what it says, right? Can you do polymorphism on variables? Listen, this is very, very important point. In Java, polymorphism applies to methods, not variables. So, whenever I'm talking about polymorphism, keep that in mind. Polymorphism is restricted to methods. You cannot apply polymorphism concept on variables. Okay. So, we will add a note here, an important note. Note. Okay. Polymorphism is applicable only on methods. Okay. Now, we are going to start with the first one, which is overriding. Okay. Let me give you an example to explain this now. So, I have here a concept called as what now? Overriding. What is overriding? Let's take one example. Now, let's assume I have one, okay, banking application in which there are two types of accounts that I need to develop. The first account that I need to develop is called as a gold account. Fine. The second category of account, what the bank is providing me is, let's say, platinum account. Fine. Platinum account. There are two categories of accounts is what you have. One is gold account. The other one is platinum account. Now, what is the difference between these two accounts? The difference is now the gold account provides online banking, and second, whatever balance you're keeping in gold account, the rate of interest is nil. What is nil? Rate of interest happens to be nil. Okay? The rate of interest happens to be what? Nil. But suppose if I now go with a platinum account, in platinum account also I have online banking feature. Fine. But the rate of interest here, rate of interest. So whatever balance you're keeping it in your account, for that, the bank will pay you 6% per annum, per year. They will calculate 6% on the balance that you have kept it in your account. Fine. Now, I want to implement these two classes. But in order to implement these two classes, one thing that I observe is online banking is a common feature between them. So what I can do here is I can just inherit this online banking feature from a platinum, from gold account. I can inherit online banking feature to platinum account. But when it comes to the rate of interest calculation, here the rate of interest that I'm now going to inherit, see, I can implement this in a different way. I'm just taking this example in layman terms again for explanation purpose. Fine. But the rate of interest that you see here now, the rate of interest method that I'm going to inherit now is not used as it is. Correct? Here rate of interest is nil, but rate of interest here is 6%, which means this inherited method needs to be modified, in the child class. Correct? When I do inheritance, I'm inheriting online banking rate of interest nil from gold account to platinum account. But the problem in platinum account is online banking, I will use it as it is. But rate of interest method, I cannot use as it is after inheriting it. Now, this rate of interest method that I'm inheriting to your platinum account, after inheriting, I have a requirement of modifying that logic of inherited method. Okay. This is where overriding comes in picture. Modifying the logic of inherited method, if you want to do it, your overriding runtime polymorphism will come into picture. Fine. See this here with a practical example, things will become more clear. So what I'll do is now, I have class A. Let's go here and let's open this class B. This one, let me delete that off. I don't require this now. Now I have here two classes. Firstly, I'll rename the class. Let me rename this class A to gold account. You can just rename like this. Type gold account. The existing class you can rename like this. Type gold account. Press Ctrl 1 and rename the file. Now this gold account has two methods. Public, void, and we have here a method called as online banking. Fine. So we'll print here just a message yes, which means online banking feature is being provided in gold account. But when it comes to rate of interest, rate of interest. Now in the rate of interest now it is 6% per annum is not provided. It is nil. As per our use case, it is nil. Now what I want to inherit the members of gold account to platinum account. Okay, so let me change this to what? Let me change this to what? Platinum account. Control 1, Control 1 and rename. And let me type here extends what? Gold account. Now, here, when I inherit the member, what is happening? Both the methods are inherited to platinum account. Both the methods are inherited to what? Platinum account. So if I now create an object of platinum account, let's see what happens. Platinum account P is equal to new platinum account. Fine. Okay. Now I'm going to write here P dot online banking and then P dot rate of interest. So for a platinum account object, when I run, you see that it is printing yes and nil, which is wrong. The rate of interest in platinum account is supposed to be 6%. But after I do inheritance, it is printing online banking yes, rate of interest nil. So now what is the problem here? The problem is these two methods that are inherited, among these two methods, online banking, I will use it as it is. But the rate of interest method that I'm inheriting now, I want to modify the logic of that inherited method. That's where overriding comes in picture. What overriding will help us to do is it will help us to modify the logic of inherited method. But how? For that, once again in your child class, create a method public void rate of interest. Fine. Now we will talk about this in our further class. Should public and public match, right? Or not? Should it be same or it can be different? These all things I will discuss later. But for now, whatever the method signature is, public void rate of interest, I'm writing here as it is public void rate of interest. So what is happening? This inherited method to platinum account, I'm replacing with this method. The method that got inherited from the gold account, I'm replacing that method in the platinum account. And after replacing, I'm now changing this to 6%. I'm changing this to 6% per annum. Now when I run this, observe, it prints yes, and then it prints what? 6%. So what is overriding helping us to do? Overriding is helping us to modify the logic of inherited method. Do you agree with that? Yes, did you understand this use case? But see this here now. Why polymorphism? Why this is called as polymorphism? Let's see this here. Now what I'll do, I'll create gold account. I'll create gold account. Fine. New gold account. Fine. Now here I'm going to type G dot online banking. G dot rate of interest. Now see that. In this case now, the online banking and rate of interest for platinum account and gold account, is it different? The rate of interest is 6%. The rate of interest is nil. Sir, why polymorphism? Because observe, the rate of interest method is taking more than one form. Isn't it? Depending on the situation. If I create an object of platinum account, this rate of interest is called. If I create a gold account, then this rate of interest is called. It is now rate of interest method. It is taking multiple forms depending on the situation. That's what is polymorphism. Here we develop a feature such that it can take more than one form depending on the situation. Fine. So rate of interest method is where polymorphism, method overriding, runtime polymorphism is now being applied. Where the rate of interest method is taking multiple forms. Is this point clear, all of you? Right? So see this here now. How many types of polymorphism we have now? Two types. What is the first one? Overriding. So simple thing. What are we doing in overriding? Here we modify the logic of inherited method in child class. Okay, simple. Now let's see what this has to tell ChatGPT. What is the definition it has given? Let's see this here now. Runtime polymorphism. This occurs when a subclass provides a specific implementation of a method that is already defined in its superclass. Correct? We are just putting it in a simple way. That's it. This method call is resolved at runtime. That see, you know there are two things, two phases: compile time, runtime. This is happening at runtime. What is runtime? When dot class file you're running it during that phase, this particular overriding will occur. Okay. This is possible through method overriding. It allows the subclass to provide its own implementation of the method. But rather, let's go with the simple definition. Please write this down quickly. Make a note of it. We'll take one more example and then we will continue further with overriding. Is it done? Okay. Now write this example. Make a note of this. Hmm. No, that is the object that we are creating, no? If this object I'm creating, it's going to call this. If this object I'm creating, it's going to call this. Because here, this object, when it is created, that's where I'm doing overriding. So when the platinum object is created, this method is loaded into that object. When gold account object is created, these methods are loaded into it. Got it? So which method is loaded, right, into that object? That is where that feature we are calling it. Is this clear? Okay. Write down, guys. Make a note of it, all of you. Okay. Now I'm going to delete this part. See this here. Now the next thing, what we need to understand, see during overriding, what if there is a mismatch in the method name? So when the method names are different, overriding is not happening. But I'm not able to see any error here. Fine. It should give me an error, right? When overriding is not happening. Because if it doesn't gives me an error, how will I know whether I'm right or wrong? So whenever overriding is being done, we use something called as annotations. What are annotations? Okay. So if you now ask here, what are annotations? Right? Next, at the rate override annotation. Okay. At the rate, at the rate override. Okay. So see this here, what it says. Annotations are special markers or metadata that provides additional information about your code, which can be used by the compiler, tools, framework during compilation or runtime. Okay, so I'll put this across in a very simple way. Forget about that. What is an annotation? Annotation helps us to instruct a compiler to do a specific task. Okay, so like this, there are several annotations which is available in Java. One of the annotation which I'm going to use it now is going to instruct a compiler to check whether overriding is happening or not. And if overriding is not happening, our compiler should throw an error, which it is not doing it now. As of now, the compiler is not checking whether overriding is happening or not. It is not throwing any error. So what I'll do is I will use this annotation at the rate. Okay. And annotation starts with capital letter override. Now, moment I apply, you see that there is an error. So with this annotation, what are we doing? We are instructing the compiler to check whether overriding is happening or not. If overriding is not happening, it will give us an error. But if I remove this S, error is gone. If I put this S, there is back error here. I hope this part is clear, all of you. Yes. So what overriding is helping us to do now? It is helping us to check whether overriding is happening or not. So what is this annotation doing? Right? What is an annotation doing? We'll put this in simple terms. We'll put this in simple terms. What an annotation does? Annotation instructs a compiler to perform specific specific task. Fine. Instruct a compiler to perform specific task. Now at the rate override. We'll talk more about annotations later. When you work with Hibernate, Spring Boot, annotations becomes very important there. Okay. At the rate override. What this does? It instructs compiler. It instructs compiler to check whether overriding is happening, overriding is happening or not. It instructs compiler to check whether overriding is happening or not. Fine, simple thing. Is this clear? Make a note of it. We will now learn further more things about overriding now. Okay, we have already covered access specifiers. We have already covered inheritance. I'm again using inheritance here. Without inheritance, overriding cannot happen. Overriding to happen, firstly, inheritance should happen. Because the purpose of overriding is what? Modify the logic of inherited method. Okay? Done? Okay. Now I want you people to make a note of this program. Make a note of this particular program. Fine. Write this down quickly. Where is the error message? Method name. See, it is highlighting method name is wrong. It is highlighting method name is incorrect, not matching. No. See, if method names are different, there is no overriding. See, what is the concept here? The concept here is modify the logic of inherited method. Okay. See, there are many instances where we will inherit a method and modify its logic. Okay. Example, see here. In advanced lecture, we are developing some spring security feature. Correct. We are developing some spring security feature. Now, I have one of the class called as, I have one of the class here that's called as configuration class. Now, there are another class here in which you notice I'm using the annotation override. Correct? Now here, what am I doing? From this particular parent class, I'm inheriting a method and I'm modifying that inherited method logic as per my requirement in the project. Correct? In my project, there is some X requirement. I inherited a method. That inherited method now I have to modify and write a logic as per my project requirement. If you create a different method itself here, it will not work at all. Did you understand? Right? So you will understand all these things when we proceed further with more advanced series of lectures. Right now, step by step is what we have to proceed. Is this clear? Okay. Next, let's remove this. Now let's do one thing. Let's do one thing. I will delete this part. Let me write here int and let me write here return keyword 100. You see now, again there is an error. Why there is an error? When the return type of a method does not match, still there is an error. When the return type of the method does not match, it still means overriding is not happening. Is the second point clear? Write down quickly. When the return type of the method is not matching, which means still overriding is not happening. Yeah. Everyone, now see. Next thing. I'll change this back to void. Now, what about access specifier? Should that match? If I now make it default, there is no error. Correct? But if I make it now back to public, there is no error. So we will now discuss about access specifiers. Should it be same or it should not be same? Method name should be same while overriding. Return type of method should be same. But what about access specifiers? See this here. During overriding, during overriding, the inherited method scope, if you are increasing, right, then there is no error. What do you mean by increasing? The inherited method is default. I'm replacing default with public. So I'm increasing the scope because public is more visible, accessible everywhere. Default is accessible only in the package. The inherited method scope, when you are increasing, there is no error. But let's say the method that I'm inheriting is public and I'm replacing with default. The inherited method, this is the inherited method. This inherited method, which I'm inheriting to this class, if I replace that to default, there will be an error. Check this out. There should be an error during what? Overriding. Why there is an error? Because during inheritance, if you are reducing the scope, then that will result in what? Error. But now let's make this default and let's make this public. What am I doing here now? I'm inheriting a method with default scope, but I'm increasing the scope to public in child class. The inherited method scope, if you're increasing, there is no problem. But if you're decreasing the scope of inherited method, there is going to be an error. Is this point clear? Yes. So tell me one thing. Should the method names be same? Yes. Return type? Yes. What about the scope? If inherited method scope I'm increasing, then no error. Inherited method scope I'm decreasing, then error. I hope this part is clear. Let's quickly write one more note here. Inherited method. What is that note? Inherited method scope. If you are decreasing, if you are decreasing, then you will get an error. Inherited method scope, if you are decreasing, then you will get an error. Fine. Inherited method scope, if decreasing, then you'll get an error. Okay. During what? Over overriding. Okay, keep this in mind. Inherited method scope, if you're decreasing, then you will get an error during overriding. Let's see some of the examples here now. First example, there is no error. Please write it as it is and be little quick. Write it as it is and be little quick. Done. Now let us reduce the scope. See, the inherited method is public and I'm replacing with default. What do you see here? Error. Did you understand now? Make a note of it. Again, the packages will come in picture here. If it is default, can I inherit that to a different package? No. Because if you make a method default, overriding of that method in different package not allowed. You make it public, overriding in different packages allowed. Did you understand now? Everyone? Okay. Next thing. Now we have here public void rate of interest. I'm inheriting, replacing with default. We see here error. We see here error. Right? We see here error. Cyber security and all. very difficult to get job, guys. Be very careful about it, right? Because this all in the college terminologies, it will college days. This all looks very fascinating, correct? But the ground reality is very different. Okay, now let's continue. Now I'll replace this with protected. Protected. I'll replace this with protected. And I'll make here public. Will it work? If I now change the scope to public, will it work? Yes. Why is it working? Because we are increasing the scope. So it is working. Make sense? Make a note of it. Write this down quickly. Write this down quickly. Done. Okay. Now, I'll change this to private. Will it work? If I change this to private, will it work? Why? Because firstly, you cannot inherit a private method at all. So this is not going to work. Okay, everybody got it now? Overriding? Yes. Make a note of it quickly. Next example. We'll see further in my next lecture overloading concept. Fine. We'll see what is overloading and why we should do overloading, which is also called as compile time polymorphism. In interview, they'll ask you what is runtime and compile time polymorphism. Done. Okay. So that's it. I'm going to stop here today and we are going to continue further tomorrow. We'll look at the next concept in my tomorrow's series of lecture. Okay, guys. Bye.